Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the XR Update podcast. This is episode number 4, and it is amazing to have you here with us. My name is Alex Milland. Sometimes I go by Alex VR, and today I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Myles Dyer. Hello, Myles. How's it going, bro?
Thank you very much, Alex. It's good to be here. So many shows on the internet, and it's nice to be here with the XR Update at last. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Me too, man. You and I both saw this episode coming on the horizon and both made sure that we were going to be involved because we established quickly that we're both fans of VR and we're both fans of metal and metal Hellsingers coming to VR. And we're going to be diving into that today. And I know you and I, neither one of us were looking to miss the opportunity to have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, this game has been percolating in my brain for a while, and the idea of it coming to VR is just joy. To get a chance to speak to devs, find out why they approached the game the way they did and how it differs from the flat screen. I mean, this is just an exciting time, I think, in the XR industry where we're starting to see more and more interest into bringing flat screen games that we adore into the VR world.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Shout out Team Beef. Shout out Flat2 VR Studios also. You and I both just got back from Cologne, Germany, where we attended Gamescom and hung out at the Home of XR booth for a week straight. And it was a pretty magical experience, man.
The Home of XR, that space. And shout out to Gamertag, whose footage I believe we're using here. Great
shout out
pan shots. Yeah. This space was incredible, and it's not in the public area. It was in the business space. So by the time it got to the weekend, it was folded away, which is sad. But the way it was structured meant that you did have the space that you needed for people to really demo VR games without it getting overcrowded. And it really felt like a coming together because, look, this is the reality, and I always hate using the word reality when you're talking about VR or XR, but everyone in that home of XR is technically competitors. They're all publishers, developers, and in many ways, the XR space is still quite a small pond compared to the wider space that is gaming. And despite all that, there was a real sense of camaraderie here, a real sense of solidarity where everyone was just there to support each other, to champion the things that we love and care about. And there was no sense of pretentiousness or anything like that or contention. It was feel good all the way through. And it's definitely an experience I'll remember for the rest of my life because it feels like a golden era we're in right now. And it's moments like this where there's a real sense of coming together, physically as well as virtually.
Absolutely. I mean, everywhere you look, you see an incredible VR developer or incredible VR creator. I mean, this place was completely stacked with VR YouTubers and TikTokers and content creators, amazing developers, Fast Travel Games and Vertigo Games, Flat2 VR Studios, of course. I honestly, my brain is a little fried because I'm still coming back. But dude, the list goes on and on and on. Everybody was there, and it was such a good time. So shout out to Mava from Beyond Frames Entertainment, who really did all the heavy lifting, pulling this thing together. Of course, this was a collaborative effort, but without her, I know that this thing would not be what it was. And also, shout out to the staff in there who was making coffees and getting waters and sodas for everybody over that whole time, because, oh my gosh, I'm pretty sure that saved my life multiple times.
And also a great shout out to Jamie and Zena as well, who were at the front desk keeping people at bay who weren't supposed to be there, which very rarely happened, but everything was just kept really, really organised, and there weren't any issues. It was the first time I've ever been firstly at Gamescom, but it's the first time I've been on the other side. I've gone to these events to check out games and things like that. This time we were there showcasing everything that Flat2 VR has announced. So Trombone Champ we had on the showroom floor, and getting people to try it out was a fun experience.
Dude, Trombone Champ Unflattened is legitimately fun, and I'm not just saying that because I am a part of Impact and Flat2 VR Studios. I love that game. It is super, super fun. The competitor and rhythm game player in me is looking past the memes and just wants to get good at tromboning. You know what I mean? I just want to get good at it.
Well, I was a massive fan of the flat screen version. I mean, it's one of the very few games I was able to play on my Mac. And so the idea of having a VR version, there was a mod at the time that I knew of, and I felt like, if only there was an official piece put together. And obviously, that story came to fruition. And so when I joined Impact Reality XR about 4 months ago now, I could see internally that this game was being worked on, and I was super excited. Which for people that are only seeing it from the outside of Trombone Champ, you're like, really? Trombone Champ VR? You're getting excited about that? But everyone who played it, and we're not just saying this, there were a lot of people that played it that came to it thinking this isn't my kind of game. They all had a smile on their face because it is just so absurd. But it's absurd, and it doesn't lean on just that. The gameplay mechanics are very intuitive. It uses the immersion of VR, and also it's not just a direct port. They've reimagined it for VR. So it's built on the original game code, but everything on top of that is all these new sort of game modes and pieces, some of which has been announced, some of it is still yet to be announced. So yeah.
Yep. And don't just take our word for it. Lots of creators were there at the home of XR who had the chance to demo Trombone Champ, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing their footage kind of trickling out over the next week or two. So pay attention to all of your favorite VR content creators who had the chance to go to Cologne, because they have tons and tons and tons of stuff to share. And I know we'll be seeing a lot of that over the coming weeks. All right, so Metal Hellsinger VR is waiting in the wings, but before we get into the interview, I want to quickly touch on a couple of news updates that have happened in the past couple of days, courtesy of the XR Update Twitter feed. If you are not following XR Update on X/Twitter, you probably should, because there are some amazing little news snippets that are getting shared all the time, including this one. So I don't know if you heard about this yet, Miles, but Meta has reportedly canceled the Quest Pro 2, citing challenges in meeting a $1,000 price point. The decision reflects lessons from the original Quest Pro struggle with the high pricing that came out at $1,500. That was like 2 years ago now? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, it says they're focusing on more cost-effective solutions. That doesn't surprise me, right? But at the same time, I'm really grateful to have a Quest Pro. Now, granted, I was able to acquire one through my work a couple of years ago, but I love that thing for like the eye tracking and the face tracking. Anytime I have to go into anything that is Horizon avatars supported, I'm throwing my Quest Pro on so people can like see me winking at them and smiling and doing all of that stuff. So I have to imagine that that's what the Quest Pro line will continue to do, is support these types of advanced features. And maybe they're just struggling to keep that price down and don't see the opportunity for a successor to the Quest Pro yet.
Yeah, I mean, even for mainstream headsets, the XR space is still such a small marketplace. And so in many ways, I wouldn't say I welcome it. Obviously, it'd be nice to see him step into that top tier bracket along with the Apple Vision Pro. But at the same time, with speculation of a cheaper Quest headset around the corner, I like the idea of Meta focusing on lowering the barriers to entry as opposed to adding a higher tier one. I think if we can keep optimizing, making better quality headsets with a low barrier to entry, so because at the moment, people that are sold on VR, and this is a bit of an obvious point, people who are sold on VR are already going to like invest in the next headsets, the better ones. We are in a stage now, which is how do we widen the marketplace and how do we convince people to take that leap? And I think that, focusing on the headsets that are going to be cheaper, much less hassle. I always think about the pancake lenses on the Quest 3. I love my PSVR 2, but when I'm showing people it and having people that have never done VR before, and I'm saying, is it clear? Have you found the sweet spot? And they're like, I think it's clear. They have no reference point. Whereas a Quest 3, you put it on and you're just good to go.
Quest 3 is super awesome, man. I absolutely love that headset. And, it's actually the only Quest other than the Quest Pro, which like the head strap is like a part of the device entirely. It's the first of like the main Quest line that I didn't have to replace the facial interface or head strap on. Like, honestly, straight out of the box, that thing's comfortable. And I have never felt like I absolutely need to replace it and get these new accessories for comfort. Well, whereas the Quest 1 and the Quest 2, both, in my opinion, were crucial. Like if you didn't have comfort mods to those headsets, you were not playing VR, so yeah, Quest 3 is doing well. It's going to be hard to beat it at that price point, especially if they release a cheaper version. But we'll keep an eye on everything, and who knows? Eventually, we'll see some form of Quest Pro successor. I'm sure. One other news topic to touch on here: Marvel Powers United VR, a game that was created by Sanzaru Entertainment back in I don't know 2020 or 2021, has been it was shut down in 2021 and it's being revived by the community. There is a project called the Marvel Powers United Revival Project, and it aims to restore the game for those who owned it, although multiplayer is not currently something that's available. Exciting news for fans of superhero VR. I just personally love stories like this where like a developer like pulls the plug on a game, or a company pulls the plug on a game, and the community just refuses to see it die. And they're like, nope, we know how to do this. We're smart. We can figure this out. And then they figure out a way to keep this beloved experience alive for themselves and for future generations. So I just think this is an awesome little piece of news and a testament to the will of the VR community.
Yeah, for most people that are proper VR enthusiasts, they're techies as well. I'm always blown away about hearing all about the gear that you need for PC VR, things that are just out of grasp mentally for me at the moment. And I think we live in an exciting time now where the online community can really set the tone and the direction in which investments are made for future VR projects. And without going too far in another direction, but I do find it rings very similar to how things were in the early YouTube days, because once upon a time you'd have TV broadcasters that would commission a show, run it for X number of episodes, and everyone would be clamoring to get commissioned. You pitch the idea, they say we're going to go with it, and then off you go. And what we found with the YouTube generation was that all these people, often in the early stages from their own bedrooms, were able to develop their own shows, build their own audiences online. And once there was a big enough demand for that content, they then got commissioned by the broadcasters, because they were like, we can't ignore this. There's clearly a demand for this. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening in the VR and XR space now, which is people can create these, flat to VR mods. And if it's with like a first party PlayStation title, like I think of Returnal, you can just keep tracking the numbers of how many people are playing it. And if enough people are playing it, it's going to be difficult to ignore. So that's one thing. But then to have people actually, a community to say, no, we're going to revive it and actively develop it. And especially with something like Marvel, which is such a big IP anyway, I think is amazing. But this is based on a former game. Were you telling me just beforehand?
Yep. Yeah. Well, this was a VR game that came out by Sanzaru. These are the developers of Asgard's Wrath 2. So this came out years ago. It looks like in the trailer it says 2018 is the year that it came out. But they pulled it offline in 2021, and the community's just like, nope, we're bringing this thing back, damn it. And they did, and it's great to see.
Gotcha. Okay, so I understand now. I didn't know if it was like a new version of it that then got pulled. So this was the original one that had been up for a few years, and now they're bringing that. That's cool.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. That's exciting stuff. And, like you were saying, it's like, it's just amazing to see these people who have the smarts, because like, I'm not a computer engineer. I'm not a developer. I don't know how to make all this stuff happen, but it is so great to see that we do have so many talented people in the space. And now you are seeing these, passions and side projects turned into legitimate VR game development studios like Flat to VR. So really, really exciting time. And I just love how the people are just taking the power and like really making the industry their own. It's really great to see. And speaking of quality flat to VR ports, Metal Hellsinger VR is coming next month. If you've never heard of Metal Hellsinger VR, it is a rhythm game, which is basically like a combination of like a rhythm game and Doom, where you're like blasting demons and beasts to the beat and awesome like heavy metal music. And it's just like makes so much sense for virtual reality.
Yeah, it's if the Doom Slayer was listening to Spotify.
Dude, exactly. So if this is your first time hearing about Metal Hellsinger, let's take a look at a trailer, and then we'll meet the people responsible for bringing this to VR. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
All right, everybody, take a look. What an amazing and epic and exciting trailer for Metal Hellsinger VR. Isn't that awesome, Myles?
I don't think I could be any more hyped. And yeah, I'm just so excited that this is finally coming to VR. I've played the flat screen version. And then when I heard that a VR one was just around the corner, this normally happens with a lot of flat screen games. I stopped playing because I want to be able to experience at least some of it for the first time in the VR landscape. So yeah, this is totally my jam.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. All right, Myles, please help me in welcoming to the XR Update podcast, Ben and Ollie from Lab42 Games, the guys who are responsible for bringing Metal Hellsinger VR to us and porting it over to the world of virtual reality. Hey, guys, thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. It's a pleasure and an honor. You know, as VR fans and as metal fans, I know Myles and I are both very much excited about this being in virtual reality now. And, you know, our hat goes off to you for all of your hard work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Because I mean, actually, off the back of that, I would just say it's one thing to bring like actual metal artists into a computer game, but now the VR community can see that they're now a part of the VR space, which is always seen as a much niche area. Is just super, super exciting. I got a really random question to kick off. Have any of the artists played the VR version yet?
Unsure. I mean, yeah, Matt Heathy did a lovely little, let's say, cameo for us announcing the demo. So we'd hope that maybe he had a random Quest 3 or Quest 2 somewhere and gave it a go, but untold, or if they did or not.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
When did you guys like personally become aware of Metal Hellsinger, like the original game? Like, was it something that you were like familiar with and you kind of were fans of already, or did the project kind of show up and present itself to you?
Cool.
Go ahead, Ollie, I think, yeah.
I'm a fanboy of Metal Hellsinger, so I found it's one of my top games of 2022. So I played a hell of a lot of it. Pardon the pun. And when it got some speculation around the studio that we could potentially work on this, I think it was really obvious that I wanted to work on it. I said it a few times to our development director, Simon Humphries. And, you know, you speak out to the world and you usually get what you want sometimes, maybe. And it happened. So I was very happy when we did sign on to it. And I was able to take over from our previous producer, Inez. Although we do miss her at the studio, I was kind of glad that I got to do the project.
Dude, Ollie, that's the dream, bro. Like, that is the dream. It's like, oh, wait a second, like stuff that I love, like presenting itself. Like Myles and I both jumped at the opportunity to do this interview with you guys because we love VR and we love metal and Metal Hellsinger. And we're like, yeah, we're doing that for sure. So that's the dream, man. Wow. I love it.
Blessing.
So when you looked at this game and the opportunity to bring it to VR, what elements of the original game sort of spoke to you first, thinking this is what we need to translate into VR? This is where VR is really going to emphasize it, because this is what we say as VR gamers and developers. It's all about the immersion. It's about VR AF mechanics, things that you can do in VR that you can't do in the flat screen. What were the first things that came to your mind when you took on this project?
Yeah, I think there was plenty of areas that were definitely interesting for it. I mean, the two most popular genres for the VR industry are shooters and rhythm games. So put them two together, and you've already got a great cocktail. But being openly honest, when for me, being maybe less of a fan than Ollie is for the franchise, when this idea was first brought about, I was like, no, this can't happen. the gameplay is too fast for VR. But then you learn about the community and how far it's come since 2016 in terms of being comfortable with a bit more intense experiences. And then you find out that these games can actually happen now. This all maybe came off the back of Doom's attempt at a VR game back in the day as well. So for me, it was just basically getting that, that frantic, arcadey, fast-paced gameplay into the VR version. And as soon as we could feel that in terms of when we were building the game, as soon as that came in, that's when I know this would be killer. This would be amazing. So for
Right.
me, yeah, it was that fast-paced gameplay that really sold it for me. As like, yeah, this is really fun.
I love it. And like you mentioned, like rhythm games are so popular in VR, and I love them myself. I love playing rhythm games, and so many rhythm games are they kind of like they work best with like electronic dubstep, like all these like kind of, I don't know, like, yeah, electronic and dubstep stuff. Like it really does work best. Like I am a huge metal fan. The more brutal, the better. Seriously. Like if it is incredibly abrasive, I'm trying to hear it. And I have played metal stuff and like hard rock stuff in games like Beat Saber. And to be honest, it doesn't quite hit in the same way that like the electronic stuff does, even though I'm a bigger fan of metal than I am of those genres of music that you see in games like Beat Saber or Synth Riders or whatever. So to have a rhythm game come that lends itself to metal music is, I think, something that is needed in the VR space. There's a lot of people out there like me who are like, or even worse, who hate electronic stuff, who are like not trying to play these types of songs, but love rhythm games. And now they can really start to express themselves in Metal Hellsinger VR, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah, I feel like that really links into the style and feeling of the game. Those VR games that you mentioned are very sort of back to Dance Dance Revolution days where they're putting on that pop culture vibe and the neon lights and stuff like that. And yeah, you're right. Playing a metal song in this neon fluorescent space doesn't really work. So yeah, when you take it back down to the basics of what it is to be a metal fan, and you put them in that really cool, intense environment, you sold them.
Rip a demon in half.
Yeah, always.
So you already spoke about, the fact that it is a very fast-paced game. How much do people need VR legs to be able to experience this? So in terms of like accessibility, comfort settings, it'd be cool to have you speak a bit about that. But what other challenges came with this game in terms of porting it over to the VR platform?
Go ahead, Ollie. Yeah.
You can take the accessibility ones, and I'll take.
Yeah, definitely. So for the accessibility options, I mean, it's been great that this has maybe come later, let's say in the modern VR life cycle. We've had 8 years now of slowly building upon norms and expectations of players in terms of their accessibility options they're looking for. So it was just making sure that we had all the basic stuff in there: snap turning, smooth turning, seated versus standing play. But we also did some cool things with our accessibility options in terms of using them as game mechanics. I mean, the trailer doesn't really sell it here, but we created a beat vignette. So we used a vignette that is usually traditionally there as a comfort option to reduce motion sickness, but we turn that into helping our gameplay mechanic, so players can subconsciously understand the beat, and they don't even need to listen to the music if the screen around them is showing the beat. So that was a nice little way that we rearranged.
So it's a pulsating vignette with the music. That's
that is
awesome.
an option, yeah. Yeah, so players will be able to find a couple of I think those that are really unique to the game, and stuff like placing UI and turning off all the UI in their own for their own preferences is also another thing that we've been happy to add. So, do you want to go for the challenges, Ollie?
Sure,
Some of the ones.
So obviously, it's a multi-platform VR game too, so lots of challenges come with that in itself. Simultaneous multi-platform, which is also even harder. So one of our biggest hurdles was the performance across the board on all platforms, just because we know in VR frame drops, motion sickness, not a good scenario. So getting the game internally, we wanted the game to just look great no matter what platform it was on, but to balance that against keeping the frame rate stable, and you don't want to just tank the graphics to make it run better, but typically the hardware range from like Quest all the way to PC is such a large range. And even platforms where we didn't expect to have some improvements to make, such as like PlayStation 5. The game's already on PlayStation 5, but it doesn't always run at 100% 60 FPS on PlayStation 5. So to a regular player, it can drop a few frames and you don't really notice it. But in VR, you can really feel that drop. So even platforms we wouldn't expect to make heavy optimizations, we had to. So that was a big challenge. And one of the main ones we had to overcome, alongside the design aspects we had to also.
Man, isn't that always the problem? Like, a new console comes out and it's like so powerful and so good, but then like what we're trying to do with it just rises right along next to it. And it's like, we can't like catch up, like we're always pushing our hardware to the limits, and it's like, no matter how good these things get, like I remember when they were talking about PlayStation 5, they were like virtually 0 loading screens, like the most powerful machine ever. And here we are, like still having to make optimizations to make VR games run the way we want them to.
Especially in like the port as well. Sorry, Betco.
No, I was going to say, yeah, it's because when we have that, let's say, unlimited power, people take advantage of it and don't, let's say, do things in the most streamlined way. So when you do, let's say, take it back a generation or take it back to something that isn't as powerful, we find all those hiccups that maybe were left in our way, and that is something that can take a while to iron out.
It's also the thing with expectations, isn't it? Because like when the new consoles came out, there was the idea of that you have these like performance modes added on to like fidelity. So they assume that people are going to go for fidelity, but if you want 60 frames per second, you can opt for that. And what they found is most people are going for the buttery smooth frame rate. I was someone who's never really been a PC gamer in more recent times. And so for me, getting to choose the frame rate option was a new thing, but it is the thing that I opt for. And now what is happening is people are choosing the higher frame rate and now complaining about it not looking as good. Yeah. And so there's these conversations of like having these sort of mixed modes. And obviously we're having the mid-gen refresh of like, the supposed PS5 Pro and things like that. And I guess it's just even more personal when it comes to VR development, because as you've touched upon, it's one thing to see it on a flat screen and like see the occasional frame drop. But in VR, whether it's the frame rates that you're literally living in and experiencing, it's your environment, or it's like tutorials. It's not just having a screen in front of you, it's making sure that you've got to cater for every context in which people might be looking in a world to ensure that they know where they're meant to be going and where things are to be signposted. I think even like people like us who work in the industry can often overlook how much more difficult it is to develop for those challenges when it comes to the VR versions.
Definitely, yeah.
So I'm curious, I assume the original development team of Metal Hellsinger has played this port. Like, were you in the room? Like, did you get to see the reactions? Like, how did the team react when they got to go inside of their own game?
So we're a little bit, I guess, across the pond from the development team, the outsiders. So I don't believe we got to see any initial reactions, but the outsiders have been really handy, let's say, across the whole development path. I know David Goldfarb, the founder of the Outsiders, has been particularly interested in the VR version of this game, as it was, I think, one of his first ideas, even when the original game was being made, was that this would be amazing in VR. So we've had great reception from the Outsiders to what we've done, and they've been sort of holding our hands with any little technical difficulties that we maybe came across. So it has been invaluable to have the original team on board and also supporting us along the way.
And so through that development process, what have been some like key things that you've learned that you perhaps didn't know from working on previous projects because of its kind of unique style of being both a rhythm game and a shooter?
Is Ben still there? I can't tell.
Oh, Ben has frozen, I think.
Oh, we lost Ben.
I thought Ben was just in deep thought, thinking very carefully about the question.
Yeah, it's okay, I can take some of it. So one of the interesting things we learned was just how the animation system drives the gameplay in Metal Hellsinger. It's quite unique, and it was a challenge to learn how to do that. See you later, Ben. Yeah, so we had to spend a lot of time breaking it down and rebuilding it essentially for our version. Yeah, that's kind of the biggest lesson, how the whole game drives in general. That was a big hurdle to overcome, but once you did it a few times for each weapon, you can process it better.
And playing it in VR, is it more difficult or is it easier? And I know that's an oversimplification because in VR, being able to shoot round corners, for example, that is something that gives you the competitive edge. But on the other hand, you're in three-dimensional space. You know, there's different cues that you get. I'm just curious in how it pars with the flat screen version, in your opinion.
Yeah, it's yes, playing both. I pre game screen version. I'm not that good in the VR version. But amazing VR version. VR baby for VR for years and since he was a young teen, so he was really the lifeblood, the balancing of this game, the right difficulty. Of course, it's not the tree level VR game. There's a lot of movement and action and things jumping at you, and the behemoth that you've adored. The flat screen feel very like you can deal with, but when it's in your face, you're getting smacked to the back of the head, and you feel the haptics in the head. That's it's a different experience.
Right.
Hey Ben.
Hey, welcome back, Ben.
Thank you. Sorry.
All good. Yeah, that is a great point. You know, a friend of mine, Chris Madsen, he works for Engage, this social platform in VR. He said something recently when I was talking to him that really stuck with me. And he was talking about the magic of scale in VR and how when you are like looking at a model of something on a flat screen, unless you put another model next to it, you have no sense of scale of that creature. It could be a giant or it could be an ant. But in VR, like you are the scale. Like you go in there and everything makes sense. Like you know exactly how big something is. So when there's a huge creature running in your face in VR versus a flat screen, it is a night and day experience.
I have the most random like example of experiencing that in VR, and it was when the Minecraft VR version came out, and the creepers in it are the same height as you in game. But when you're in VR, even though it's the same height of you, it just felt way more menacing. Like, and it was like, that was Minecraft, you know, nice and cartoony. And that was like a real wake up for me. And also when you're going in like one wide block corridors on a flat screen, it's all in frame. Whereas in VR, you get a real sense of that claustrophobia. So yeah, the whole point about scale, I think, is such a good one. And
totally. The other thing that you were saying, Miles, earlier about the difficulty in VR, that kicked up another thought that I wanted to share. I have played Quake 3 Arena in VR, the Team Beef mod, and that game is multiplayer, and you can play that on the servers, like on the Quake servers against flat screen gamers. And I was ripping them up, dude. Like ripping people up being in VR versus in the flat screen, because you can do stuff, to your point, Miles, that you simply cannot do on a flat screen. Like flat screen, your gun's attached to your chin. So wherever you're looking, your gun has to kind of follow with it. And in VR, I can be looking over here and like firing a gun over my shoulder and like doing stuff that is, for all intents and purposes, cheating in the flat screen game. So it is a very interesting point. It really does change what you can do when you pull these games from flat into VR.
We've had some quite cool, interesting experiences with, I said the behemoth thing I referenced earlier, with people just like trying it for the first time, and you see them, the players, even in demo and in a digital level, when the behemoth charges, or people just like screaming, just intimidating, and that's the cool. You don't get that unless we did something right when we get the reactions like that.
Well,
absolutely.
Can I just speak to that then? Because obviously this is all about music, but like sound design is so much more immersive when it comes to VR, especially when it comes to 3D audio. Some of the most mundane things can make you jump in VR when it's creeping up behind you because you just see it in the corner of your eye and there it is. What was some of the considerations you had to make when porting this into VR? You know, we've spoken a lot about the graphics and the gameplay, but maybe like the audio side, even with the music, were there challenges with that or things that you were able to do and like lean into more because it was in VR?
With regards to audio, yes, wasn't much to do there other than make sure that the 3D spatial audio that the headsets provide is being utilized well. That was one of the, I guess, the nicer areas of the development, was not having to touch the sound too much, because I'm sure the complexities to set up the rhythm system the Outsiders originally created would have been maybe a nightmare to delve into. So it was thankfully not too difficult in any of those areas.
Well, I'm going to show my ignorance with this kind of thing here, because whenever you play rhythm games on a flat screen, and actually I think you do it on the flat screen version of this game, is you have the sync with your TV. You know, you hit the buttons to make sure that the latency between your TV and what you're hearing is in sync. Am I right in my understanding that is actually redundant when it comes to VR, because you're basically designing for a headset, so the audio and the headset visuals are always going to be the same? You're not doing it for different TVs, or is that completely wrong?
Sadly not, yeah. We must think of, in a way, Bluetooth headphones and stuff like that could also have latency. But the
Right.
latency is also there because of human error. You know, latency is also to do with what you prefer, how quickly you perceive the data as well. So we were hoping that would actually be the case. That was
Yeah.
one of the things, I'm sure, at the start, where we are like, oh yeah, the syncing wouldn't be needed. But quickly we found out that people are different, and there's also lots more factors to think about. So the having to sync at the start of your experience is still there for the VR version.
Yeah, it's a fine line to walk with rhythm games, you know? Like, I know with Beat Saber, like, you can still get maximum points on your strike within a wide window of timing. Like, they realized that, like, the more precise they made it, the less fun it made it for a lot of players. So, like, as long as you were, like, pretty close, they score you more on your, like, the what you're doing with your swing than your actual timing. And I've seen people like Ben Lang from Road to VR argue that Beat Saber is not a rhythm game because of that, because your scoring is not based on how well you're hitting the rhythm, more on how widely you're swinging your sword. So I imagine there's probably a nice buffer there here with Metal Hellsinger VR as well.
Definitely, yeah. It's actually linked to difficulty, let's say, which I guess it's something I would hope Beat Saber does as well, in terms of giving you a larger window to hit the block in, for example. And the same with Beat Saber, yeah, there is a larger window on the lower difficulties. This is, I guess, a great time to touch on aim assist as well
Yeah.
for this particular game, because we really had to toss up what we deemed to be more important to the player in terms of priority. When you're shooting and you've got 7 enemies in front of you, and you've also got to make sure you're staying to the beat, what do you prioritize? And for us, it was to make sure the player is focusing more on the rhythm to keep up their fury multiplier and their hit streak, for example, rather than the shooting. So you'll notice that in our lower difficulties, there is actually some strong aim assist so that players can focus more on the rhythm rather than having to worry about, did I actually hit that guy? Am I right? I mean, right on his head, for example. So we're a bit lenient in those areas, but if players do want that really hardcore difficulty, there is always Archdevil, and that will ruin your mind.
That does not, I do not doubt that at all. And if for a game called Metal Hellsinger, I hope there's something in there that ruins your mind. Like, let's be real. Like I said earlier, like, it means a lot to us that we have people like you out there that are making these official VR versions happen of games that we love. And, you know, the Flat to VR modding community has been doing this unofficially for a long time, but it means so much more when we get these like official versions. Before you guys did this port, there actually was a community mod from the Flat to VR modding community. Were you guys aware of that before you started work on this?
Yeah, so I guess it would have been the publisher Funcom that was more aware of the VR port than we were, due to just it helping show the community interest in this game. The community interest has been so strong even since its release from Metal Hellsinger, so it was clear that this would be a match made in heaven, thanks to, let's say, the push from the community for this thing to happen. So what you guys are doing at Flat to VR can help developers and publishers consider taking the leap, taking the step to get that VR port going, and actually making their step is, yeah, going to be down to, will people buy this? So work you do is invaluable, let's say.
Well, thank you so much. And, you know, shout out to the actual people who do that, right? Like, I might have a shirt with the logo on it right now, but I am not the person making this happen, you know, like and like I said, it's you guys, it's the Flat to VR modding community. It's all the developers out there who are building VR games from scratch. Like, it means so much to us as VR gamers to start to get experiences like Metal Hellsinger VR into our libraries, onto the Quest, onto the PlayStation VR. Like, it is amazing. So like I said, I hope you know how much we appreciate all the work that you guys are doing to make stuff like this happen, because we know it's not exactly easy to do, jumping through hoops licensing wise and business deals, and then actually pulling it off and making it feel good. There's just so much that goes into it. So yeah, on behalf of the community, thanks for that.
That's okay. Yeah, we're definitely a long way past just attaching a VR camera to a character and calling it a day, which is what we're scared that some companies may do for their ports. So yeah, when we saw this and when we got this opportunity, it was really a labor of love to be like, what does the community want? What was this game originally, and how do we retain the identity in VR was a big consideration of ours.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of your key takeaways when it comes to actually working on a VR game from the ground up, and then actually doing a port from flat to VR? I mean, what are your feelings with both those kind of projects? Because I'm sure they both have stuff that you enjoy on both, and others maybe not so much. I mean, there's a real magic, isn't there, when you take something that is on a flat screen and then you're like, now you're in that world, like it's sort of going through a door and sort of experiencing it in a whole new way. But I was just wondering if you could speak about working on those two types of VR projects.
I could take this one, Ollie, if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Let's say there hasn't been much experience with starting from the beginning at Lab42 Games, but the porting wise and of VR, yeah, we are kind of starting to get much more experienced at. Metal Hellsinger VR for us comes off the back of us porting Grid Legends. We were the company that did the Grid Legends port. So that was, I guess, our first foray into what it means to make a VR port. And that allowed us to understand so much about the technical challenges and the optimizations that are needed to bring a flat screen game that maybe hasn't had the optimizations because they have free reign to do whatever they want, and bringing that onto a frankly now underpowered platform in the Quest 2. It's definitely showing its age a little bit, so that taught us a lot and definitely made the development of Metal Hellsinger a lot smoother. But for myself personally, I used to work at a VR arcade where we just put people into VR games and give them a little bit of a taste of their first time in VR. So I've definitely seen what it means to make a game from the beginning, and how to make it fun, which I hope I poured a bit into this. I watched people play Arizona Sunshine on a daily basis pretty much.
Yeah.
So I can walk you through that first level with my eyes closed. But that knowledge that I gained from watching those games, Lone Echo, Raw Data, Arizona Sunshine, all those OG VR games that really started off, I took that knowledge on of watching what players do and made sure that their pitfalls are not in Metal Hellsinger VR.
Thank you for that. Is there anything about this project that is like pretty important, or that you like really want to share with the community that we haven't touched on yet? Something that we should probably make sure we mention while we have the opportunity.
You take it first, Ben. I'll pick up after you.
Yeah, definitely. My baby in this game is the hub. The amount of work that we had to do, one, to get the hub approved as like, you guys, we need to spend some time on this, and two, what it ended up being is because the hub is, let's say, I think that wasn't necessary for the VR version, but it is our love sign to the community and to the VR game that we have a hub environment, and all the things that you can do in the hub, all the world building it offers to the game, and just as so much of a better interaction methods. The simplest thing of selecting your level is now fun in the VR version, thanks to the hub and the time and effort that we put into that. So for me, that's my baby. I'm really proud of that one, and I hope VR players appreciate it as much as we do.
Before you go, Ollie, I just want to touch on that, because you said it's not essential, the hub, and literally it's not essential, but I think it's something that's often overlooked in games. Like that, Gran Turismo 7, it is a flat screen menu, and it actually works for that game. You don't need to be like in the garage. It would be nice, and there are some VR environments, but I do think that VR hubs are so impactful for like the VR platform as a whole. I wish that when I bought my PSVR 2, when you first fired it up, you were in a PlayStation home or something, and you had your trophies on a shelf, and then you could go into games. It's kind of what the dream of the metaverse is. And I think that the only way we're ever going to be able to push that forward is if more games do just not say we just need a menu in there so you can jump into the game, but actually have something that you want to explore and is introductory about the world building and stuff like that. So just want to say a massive thanks for working on that, and I can't wait to experience it.
I'm a big believer in that as well. It was sad to see some of the big giants, the Resident Evil remakes, not taking that route and choosing to do other things, which is fine. It's all about the gameplay experience. The hub is very minor, but when we speaking about how do you separate a flat screen game from a VR game, that is one of the key areas that you can use to your advantage.
Can you just quickly mention a couple of things that you can do in the hub?
Yeah, so let's start. I'm picturing it in my head right now.
Yeah.
So start from the left side. There's a weapon selection wall, and the 4 slots of that weapon selection wall link to your weapon wheel in gameplay. So depending on which slot you put your weapon into, depends on where that weapon will show up in the weapon wheel. So that was like a little bit of a put your weapon in there, you'll find it in the game in that position. The middle of the hub is the level selection and music selection. So Metal Hellsinger ties well to vinyl discs and vinyl records. So
amazing.
We had to allow the player to. This was a big headache at the beginning because you can play any level with any song. So we had to somehow show that in a coherent way in the hub.
Wow.
So the level you actually select is the vinyl sleeve, but the music for that level is your vinyl disc. So that's great.
That's amazing.
In front of you got the portal. This was generated because in the base game, at the start of the level, there's a cutscene, and the unknown, the main character, she comes from a portal in the sky. And I was like, why don't we have an origin point for that portal? And you can obviously have a little peer into the level before you go in with the portal. Portal's bloody amazing. And then the final thing which people have really been starting to appreciate is there's a bookshelf on the right side, and those books are your settings menus. So instead of, again, having a flat screen that the player just interacts with the laser pointer, you pick up a book and there is the information towards you. You can move the book around, and it's so much more immersion, so much better than just including a flat screen. I love the hub. I think you can tell.
Good stuff, dude. This is so good. Ollie, what do you want to make sure we touch on?
Yeah, just to touch on what Ben said, I guess, as well. How can you say no to any suggestion Ben makes when he's that passionate about it?
Right.
It's hard to get in with the time we had, right? But a motto for our game has always been like, we want to make sure this doesn't just seem like a cheap port. We want to make sure it's like an adaptation of the original game. We want to put a lot of love into this game and really like show that off. So it's something that I would like to add to what Ben said. Essentially, so extension of the hub, I guess, is the first DLC you can get with the game when you pre-order. It's been announced in the trailer this week. There's 3 skins, which are the I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but there's 3 skins. And in the flat screen, you can kind of see their armor hanging around when you're shooting, but in VR, you just can't see that because it's just floating hands, right? So we took the time to go back and like craft these like bespoke hands for each skin, so the players in VR really felt like they were getting something alongside just the weapon, the songs, and we want them to feel like they got these like gloves and adornments on the hand. So there's the one skin which is like the Morning Star, which is like kawaii pop, and we had a lot of fun with just like putting bows all over the hands. Some of the concepts are really cool. I hope we can show them one day. We settled on something a bit less chaotic, but and I guess still not, no matter how you look at it, it's not very metal to have like pink frilly bows, but it's
baby metal has something to say. Baby metal has entered the chat right now.
That's a really good point to add, Ollie. This is more of an adaptation than a port, and we did create some of our own art from Lab42 Games in terms of user interface and the assets as well. So that's a really nice point to add.
Well, we are fans of metal. We're fans of VR, and it's clear that we just undoubtedly will have to be fans of Metal Hellsinger VR as a result of that. So again, guys, thank you so much for all the work that you've done, bringing this game to life for all of us VR fans. Shout out to Sumo Digital, Lab42 Games. Like, really appreciate you guys, and stay in touch. Like, we will be keeping an eye on you now that we know you can do this. We'll be expecting more in the future. So don't go anywhere. Okay.
Thank you.
We're more than happy to be in the VR community, and let's hope Lab42 gets some more opportunities to work on VR games in the future.
I'll be sending my wish list.
Yeah,
I just send it to everyone. Just send it to everyone.
All right, Myles, help me in joining me and everybody watching. Join us in saying goodbye to Ollie and Ben. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you.
Cheers, guys. All the best with the launch.
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. And Myles, I can't wait to play this game, dude. I don't know
Yep.
about you.
That's why I was just messing up my hair again. Just making sure it's, just I like to make it different between interviews and the before and after.
I like to do that also. That, dude, I really cannot wait to play this game. I think we've touched on this plenty, but this is the cross section of a lot of things that I love. And it's clear that these developers put a lot of love and passion into this. So it's only a matter of time before I'm in there and you're in there. And I don't know, I guess we'll be like challenging each other to high scores relatively soon.
And it's got an original soundtrack. So for live streaming, I think we spoke with him afterwards because, if it's not clear already, that was recorded. just in case anyone in case anyone was under any uncertainty. No, we didn't just flicker and change a little bit. I just don't like to lie to the audience, man. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Well, I went through a lot of trouble to really pull off this cohesive experience. So, for you to just pull back the curtain like that, Myles, is, it hurts me a little bit, but I wouldn't have been able
to hold it anymore. But no, after the interview, we spoke to him and was asking about it being, friendly for live streaming. And it is. I think they said the DLC might have some tracks that aren't, but like the core game. And that's what you want when it comes to these music games. There's nothing worse than having a music game and then you want to like live stream it and show it to people and then you just get copyright claims. This is going to be a great game to live stream, I think. Oh, Looper in the chat. And by the hello, everyone in the chat. Thank you for all the comments throughout and the love and the support. Looper didn't notice the transition. You're far too kind.
That's what I'm talking about. That's because we crushed it.
But I was just going to say that the fact that Doom have stopped doing VR games just makes an even bigger opening for this kind of game to succeed. So I think that this is very well placed. And I can't wait to play it, but I also can't wait to watch other people play it who will be much better at the game than me and showing off their skills. So super hyped.
Good, man. It's going to be good. Links are in the description to Metal Hellsinger on Quest, on Steam, and as well as their website. Again, this is the XR Update podcast. Check out xrupdate.com. That is our internal news outlet where we will be sharing all kinds of amazing stories from throughout the world of VR. Make sure you follow XR Update on Twitter. We always pull tweets from the XR Update into these episodes to have quick little discussion points on some of the recent news. And I don't know, like and subscribe, right? Is that it, Myles?
Yep, like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified of all future live streams because we're here to keep you updated with everything in the world of XR. I just made that up. I don't know if that's a good slogan, but we're sticking to it. That was
beautiful. Excellent. All right, Myles, thank you for joining me. Again, I'm Alex. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you in a couple of weeks for another episode of the XR Update podcast. Have a good week. We'll see you next time.
Love you all. Bye.